For over 4,000 years, they have stood in silence. Monuments of stone, carved not only by human hands, but by ambition, faith, and dreams that reached beyond death itself. The pyramids of Egypt, eternal, immovable, immortal. Yet behind these colossal structures lies a civilization that shaped the world in ways we are only beginning to understand. What secrets were buried with the pharaohs? What mysteries still lie beneath the sands? Egyptology is not just the study of tombs and treasures. It is the decoding of humanity's oldest story, a story of gods and kings, of science and spirituality, of power and legacy. The Nile was Egypt's heartbeat. Without it, there would have been no civilization. At its peak, ancient Egypt stretched for nearly 3,000 years, longer than any empire in recorded history. They built cities, developed medicine, advanced mathematics, and engineered monuments so precise that modern science still struggles to explain their perfection. Even today, 95% of Egypt's population lives along the riverbanks of the Nile, just as their ancestors did thousands of years ago. But Egypt's legacy was nearly lost. For centuries, its temples crumbled, its language forgotten. Then, in 1799, a single stone, found in Rosetta, unlocked the key to a civilization's voice. The Rosetta Stone, inscribed in 3 scripts, gave scholars the first doorway into the hieroglyphic code. Suddenly, walls began to speak. Statues told stories, and the silent sands roared with history once more. Egyptology is not only about the past, it is about us, the dreams of immortality, the quest for knowledge, the hunger for legacy. These are not ancient desires, they are human desires. And in Egypt, they were carved into stone so they could never be forgotten. For every tomb uncovered, there are hundreds still hidden. For every story told, countless remain buried beneath the desert sands. Egyptology is not finished. It is still being written, with every discovery whispering from the earth that the past is never truly gone. The pharaohs believed in eternity, and in a way, they were right. Their world still lives within ours. To study Egyptology is to hold a mirror to humanity itself, to see where we came from, and to wonder where we are going. Egypt is not only history, it is memory, a legacy carved in stone for all of time. Welcome to the History Vault. Stay with us as we uncover hidden history. They rise from the desert like eternal guardians, their sharp edges cutting into the horizon as if defying the passage of time. The Great Pyramids of Giza are not just monuments. They are messages carved in stone, left by a civilization that refused to be forgotten. For over 4,500 years, they have stood against wind, sand, and the weight of centuries, surviving as the only remaining wonder of the ancient world. But what do these colossal structures truly tell us? And how were they built with such precision in an age without modern machines? To the casual eye, they may seem like mountains of stone, but every block, every angle, every hidden passage speaks of ambition beyond measure. The Great Pyramid alone is made of more than 2 million limestone blocks, some weighing as much as 70 tons. Transported across miles of desert stacked with flawless precision, it rises nearly 500 feet into the sky. For centuries, scholars, engineers, and explorers have asked the same question. How could ancient builders achieve what seems impossible even today? There are theories, endless debates about ramps, pulleys, manpower, and genius engineering. Some believe tens of thousands of laborers worked year after year, dedicating their lives to the king they served. But the most striking discovery is not just the scale, but the humanity behind the stone. These were not slaves in chains, as once believed. Archaeological evidence shows they were skilled workers, craftsmen, and farmers who labored with pride during the months when the Nile flooded their fields. Building the pharaoh's eternal resting place was not punishment, it was service. Faith and duty to their gods and their king, and beyond their sheer size, the pyramids hold mysteries that stir both science and imagination. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, for instance, is aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal points, north, south, east, and west, so precise that modern compasses confirm its accuracy. How did a people from 2500 BC manage such perfection? Was it advanced observation of the stars, or knowledge that we have lost to time? Inside, the pyramids reveal a different kind of wonder. Dark corridors lead into chambers where kings were once laid to rest, surrounded by treasures meant to guide them into the afterlife. To the Egyptians, death was not an end, but a passage, a journey toward eternity. Every carving, every sealed chamber was part of a grand design to ensure immortality. And as archaeologists step carefully through these silent halls today, they walk in the footsteps of those who believed that even stone could hold the soul of a god-king. But the pyramids are only the beginning. Across Egypt, temples rise like open books of stone. The Temple of Karnak in Luxor stretches for more than 200 acres, filled with towering columns that dwarf anyone who walks among them. Imagine standing there in the shadow of a forest of stone, where each pillar is covered with hieroglyphs telling stories of gods, victories, and offerings. This was not just architecture. It was a statement of power, a stage where kings connected themselves with the divine. And then there is Abu Simbel, the temple carved directly into a mountain by Pharaoh Ramses II. 4 colossal statues of the king sit at its entrance, each nearly 70 feet tall, staring into eternity with unshakable calm. When the sun rises twice a year, its rays reach deep inside the temple, illuminating the statues of the gods within. Was this careful planning or a miracle of chance? Whatever the truth, the effect is breathtaking, as if the king himself could command the very light of the sun. These monuments were more than tombs and temples. They were messages. Messages to the gods, messages to their people, and messages to the future. They told the world that Egypt was eternal, that its rulers were more than men, and that their legacy would not fade. And in this, the pharaohs were right. Their names still echo in our time. Khufu, Ramses, Tutankhamun. The stone speaks, and we still listen. But for all that we know, there is still so much hidden. Beneath the sands of Egypt, countless tombs and temples remain undiscovered. Even today, archaeologists continue to find new chambers, hidden passageways, and treasures that have not seen the light for thousands of years. Each discovery adds another piece to the puzzle, but it also raises new questions. What secrets remain buried? What stories of kings, queens, and forgotten gods wait for us in the silent desert? The monuments of Egypt endure because they were never meant to fade. They were designed to defy time itself, to ensure that the pharaohs would live forever. And as long as we stand in awe before them, as long as we continue to ask how and why, they have achieved exactly that. These colossal stones are not just history, they are voices from the past, calling us to remember, to wonder, and to keep searching. The story of Egypt cannot begin with kings, or gods, or pyramids. It begins with a river, a ribbon of blue winding through endless deserts. The Nile was the thread that stitched life into the land of sand and stone. Without it, there would have been no pharaohs, no temples, no civilization that lasted 3,000 years. The river was not only water, it was survival, faith, and power. Every summer, the Nile swelled with the rains from faraway mountains in Africa. The floodwaters poured across Egypt's banks, covering the land in dark, fertile soil. For the people, this was not destruction, it was a gift. When the waters receded, the earth was renewed, rich and ready for planting. Year after year, the river's rhythm created the calendar of life. Wheat, barley, flax, and vegetables sprouted from the soil, feeding the people and sustaining armies. In a land where rain almost never fell, the Nile was the difference between life and death. And so the river became more than water. It became sacred. To the Egyptians, it was the blood of their gods, the path between life and the afterlife. They told stories of Hapi, the god of the inundation, who controlled the yearly flood. When the river rose high and crops were plentiful, it meant the gods were pleased. When the flood was weak, hunger and fear spread across the land. In this way, the Nile was not just nature, it was the voice of the divine. But the Nile was also a highway carrying people, ideas, and trade. Long boats with tall sails glided across its waters, connecting villages and cities from the delta in the north to Nubia in the south. From the river came not only food, but also stone, gold, and cedar wood carried from distant lands. It was on the Nile that Egypt grew wealthy, and with wealth came monuments, armies, and empires. Even the very shape of Egypt was carved by the river. Look from above, and you will see a sharp contrast. A narrow green strip hugging the Nile surrounded by endless desert. This thin ribbon of life stretched for more than 700 miles, creating what the Greeks later called the gift of the Nile. Without it, Egypt would have been only sand. With it, it became one of the greatest civilizations the world has ever known. And while the river gave life, it also demanded respect. Too much flooding and villages were swept away. Too little and famine threatened. Measuring the Nile became a matter of survival. The Egyptians built nilometers, stone staircases carved into the riverbanks, to record the height of the waters each year. From these records, priests and officials could predict harvests, plan taxes, and prepare for scarcity. In this way, the Nile shaped not only nature but also politics and power. The pharaoh himself was seen as the protector of the river's bounty, the one who maintained harmony between gods and men. But the Nile was more than practical. It shaped imagination, religion, and even death. The river flowed north, but the sun rose in the east and set in the west. To the Egyptians, east became the land of the living, where the sun was reborn each morning. West became the land of the dead, where the sun disappeared into darkness. This is why tombs and pyramids were built on the west bank of the Nile, because that was where the souls of the departed began their journey to the afterlife. Life and death, sunrise and sunset, were all bound to the rhythm of the river. The Nile's influence reached into every detail of Egyptian life. It dictated when festivals were held, when farmers worked, and when builders could leave their fields to labor on the pharaoh's monuments. It inspired songs, hymns, and poetry. One ancient hymn called the Nile, the bringer of food, rich in provisions, creator of all good things. For the Egyptians, the river was not just a force of nature, it was a living presence, a god walking through their world. What is remarkable is how this connection to the river endured through centuries of change. Dynasties rose and fell. Invaders came and went, but the Nile remained, flowing with the same steady rhythm, binding people to the land. Even today, 95% of Egypt's population lives along the Nile or within a few miles of its banks. The same fields that once fed pharaohs now feed millions of modern Egyptians. The same river that carried stone for pyramids now carries boats filled with tourists. Time has passed, but the heartbeat of Egypt has not changed. And yet, the river still holds mysteries. Ancient texts speak of canals and irrigation systems that turned deserts into farmland, but many of these have vanished beneath the sands. Archaeologists continue to search for forgotten harbors, buried canals, and lost villages that once thrived along its banks. With each discovery, we see more clearly how the Nile was not only a river, but also a stage on which the drama of human civilization unfolded. The story of the Nile is the story of Egypt itself. It was the giver of life, the keeper of order, the link between earth and heaven. To understand the river is to understand why this civilization endured longer than any other. As the waters flowed, so did history, carving a legacy that still shapes the world today. To understand Egypt, one must step into a world where gods walked among men, and kings ruled not only the land, but also the heavens. For the ancient Egyptians, life was never simply about the present. Every act, every temple, every ritual was tied to a larger belief that existence stretched far beyond death. Their world was shaped by faith, a faith so powerful it left behind monuments of stone that still stand today. The Egyptians worshipped a vast number of gods and goddesses, each tied to elements of nature, daily life, or the mysteries of the afterlife. Ra, the sun god, was the great creator, sailing across the sky each day in his golden boat, bringing light and life. Osiris, lord of the underworld, represented death, rebirth, and eternal justice. Isis, the mother goddess, symbolized protection and magic, while Horus, the falcon-headed god, stood for kingship and the skies. These deities were not distant figures. They were everywhere, carved into temple walls, painted in tombs, carried in amulets around the necks of ordinary people. But among mortals, the pharaoh stood apart. To his people, he was not only a ruler, he was divine. He was believed to be the living Horus, chosen by the gods themselves to maintain harmony on earth. His duty was more than political, it was spiritual. He had to uphold Ma'at, the concept of cosmic order, justice, and balance. If the Nile failed to flood, if famine struck, or if enemies threatened, it was seen as a failure of the pharaoh's connection to the gods. His role was sacred, his responsibility eternal, and yet even the god-king could not escape death. For Egyptians, death was not the end. It was the beginning of a perilous journey into the afterlife, a passage filled with trials, judgments, and transformations. This belief shaped nearly everything they built and everything they left behind. Tombs were not graves, they were gateways. The pyramids, with their hidden chambers and treasures, were designed to prepare the king for eternity. Inside, walls were covered with spells and prayers, maps of the heavens, and instructions to guide the soul safely through the dangers of the underworld. One of the most powerful images of this journey is the weighing of the heart. In Egyptian belief, when a person died, their heart was placed on a scale against the feather of Ma'at. If the heart was pure, lighter than the feather, the soul was granted eternal life in the field of reeds, a paradise where the dead lived as they had on earth but free of suffering. If the heart was heavy with sin, it was devoured by a monster named Amit, and the soul was lost forever. This vision of moral judgment gave weight to life's actions, reminding Egyptians that what they did in the present echoed in eternity. To secure their passage, the dead were surrounded with offerings, food, drink, furniture, even board games to enjoy in the next world. Servant statues, called shabtis, were placed in tombs to come alive and work on behalf of the deceased in the afterlife. Most famous of all was mummification, the careful preservation of the body so that the soul, or Ka, could recognize and return to it. For the Egyptians, body and spirit were inseparable. To destroy the body was to destroy the soul. This is why such extraordinary effort went into preserving even the smallest detail, from the wrapping of limbs to the placing of amulets between layers of linen. But perhaps the greatest legacy of these beliefs can be seen in the treasures buried with the dead. When Howard Carter uncovered the tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922, the world was stunned by the riches hidden in the Valley of the Kings. A golden mask, thrones, chariots, jewelry, all carefully placed to serve a young pharaoh in eternity. These objects were not symbols of greed. They were part of a deep conviction that life continued beyond the grave, and that the dead carried their world with them into forever. What is striking is how deeply these beliefs shaped the living world as well. Temples were built as houses for the gods, where priests performed rituals to maintain divine order. Festivals celebrated the cycles of the sun and the flood of the Nile, binding people to the rhythm of their gods. Even ordinary families honored ancestors with prayers and offerings, hoping for protection and guidance from the spirit world. Life, death, and afterlife were not separate. They were one continuous circle. This circle of faith is what gave Egypt its enduring power. It drove the construction of the pyramids, the carving of colossal statues, and the writing of sacred texts like the Book of the Dead. It created a culture where every action, from planting a seed to crowning a king, carried cosmic meaning. And it gave the Egyptians a sense of eternity that still resonates today. To walk among the tombs and temples of Egypt is to step into that world, where gods ruled the skies, kings ruled the earth, and death was not feared, but embraced as the next chapter of existence. Their faith turned stone into scripture, and their quest for immortality gave humanity some of its most enduring wonders. Even now, thousands of years later, the names of their gods are spoken, their stories retold, and their belief in eternity continues to inspire awe. For centuries, Egypt was a land wrapped in silence. Its temples crumbled under desert sands, its language became unreadable, and its gods were forgotten. Travelers who passed by the pyramids could only marvel at their size, but the stories behind them were lost. The voices carved into walls and painted across tombs no longer spoke to the world. For nearly 2,000 years, ancient Egypt was a mystery frozen in stone. That silence began to break in 1799 with a discovery that would change history. During Napoleon's campaign in Egypt, French soldiers uncovered a slab of dark stone near the town of Rosetta. It seemed ordinary at first, just another artifact among ruins. But this single stone carried 3 scripts: Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphs. What no one realized then was that it would become the key to unlocking an entire civilization's voice. For decades, scholars struggled to understand Egypt's ancient writing. Hieroglyphs had been dismissed as simple pictures, symbolic but meaningless. The Rosetta Stone proved otherwise. Because Greek was already known, scholars could compare the scripts line by line. It was a race against time, but in 1822, Jean-François Champollion announced the breakthrough. He had cracked the code. Hieroglyphs were not just symbols. They were a complex written language, capable of expressing sounds, names, and ideas. For the first time in over 1,000 years, the words of the pharaohs could be read again. This discovery sparked a wave of passion across Europe and beyond. Egyptology was born. Explorers, scholars, and treasure hunters flooded into the Nile Valley, eager to uncover the secrets of the ancients. Some came for knowledge, others for fame, and many for wealth. They dug into tombs, carried away statues, and filled museums with artifacts that stunned the public. Suddenly, the mysterious land of pyramids and sphinxes became a living story, told through the objects unearthed from the sand. But the rediscovery of Egypt was not without drama. In the Valley of the Kings, tombs had been looted for centuries. Many seemed empty, stripped of gold and treasure. And yet, whispers persisted, rumors of untouched burial chambers still hidden in the cliffs. That rumor became reality in 1922, when British archaeologist Howard Carter uncovered the tomb of Tutankhamun. The world watched in awe as treasures beyond imagination were revealed. Solid gold shrines, jeweled masks, weapons, chariots, and the boy king's coffin. It was the most complete pharaoh's tomb ever found, sealed and untouched for over 3,000 years. The discovery electrified the world. Newspapers printed photographs of golden treasures that seemed like dreams made real. Crowds gathered at museums to glimpse even the smallest objects. For many, it was the first time the ancient world felt close enough to touch. Tutankhamun became a symbol not only of Egypt, but of archaeology itself, the idea that the past still waits to be uncovered. Yet not all discoveries were celebrated. The early years of Egyptology were marked by mistakes, rushed excavations, and even destruction. Many tombs were stripped without care, and treasures were shipped across continents, leaving Egypt's heritage scattered. Still, these early efforts opened the door to modern archaeology, where science replaced treasure hunting. Today, teams of experts use advanced technology, satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, and DNA testing to uncover the past with precision and respect. Even now, Egypt continues to reveal its secrets. In recent decades, hidden chambers have been discovered near the pyramids. Entire cities buried under sand have emerged, with streets, houses, and workshops that once bustled with life. In Luxor, the so-called Lost Golden City was uncovered in 2021, described as one of the most important finds since Tutankhamun's tomb. These discoveries remind us that much of Egypt is still waiting, its stories locked beneath the desert floor. But the rediscovery of Egypt is more than archaeology. It is a bridge between past and present. When Champollion read the first hieroglyphs, he didn't just reveal a language, he gave back a civilization's voice. When Carter opened Tutankhamun's tomb, he didn't just uncover treasure, he restored a forgotten king to memory. Each discovery reconnects us to the people who lived, worked, dreamed, and prayed thousands of years ago. And perhaps the greatest impact is how Egypt continues to inspire. Its artifacts fill museums, its monuments attract millions of visitors each year, and its legacy shapes art, literature, and film. From the golden mask of Tutankhamun to the towering obelisks that now stand in cities across the world, Egypt's rediscovery has become part of global culture. What was once silent has become a story told in every language. Yet the sands still hold mysteries. How many tombs remain hidden in the Valley of the Kings? What treasures lie in chambers yet unopened beneath the pyramids? What forgotten names are still waiting to be read on crumbling walls? Each question is a reminder that history is never finished. Egypt's story continues to unfold, one discovery at a time. The rediscovery of ancient Egypt was not just about finding ruins, it was about reviving memory. A civilization that had once seemed lost now breathes again through the work of scholars and explorers. Its temples, statues, and writings speak louder than ever, telling us not only about kings and gods, but about humanity's endless quest to understand itself. Under the burning sun of Egypt, colossal stone guardians rise from the desert, silent, unblinking, and carved with an artistry that still stirs awe thousands of years later. To stand before the pyramids of Giza is to face a paradox, structures so immense and enduring, yet born from a civilization that has long since disappeared. These monuments are not simply tombs of kings. They are testaments to human ambition, engineering genius, and a culture's unwavering devotion to eternity. Their story is one of mystery, of unanswered questions that continue to drive archaeologists, historians, and travelers from every corner of the world. The Pyramid of Khufu, known as the Great Pyramid, dominates the horizon like a mountain shaped by human hands. It was built more than 4,500 years ago, and yet its stones, each weighing several tons, remain stacked with astonishing precision. Imagine the effort. Tens of thousands of workers, some skilled artisans, others laborers, bound together in a project that spanned decades. Contrary to older myths of slaves being forced into endless toil, evidence now shows that these workers were organized, fed and housed in well-constructed villages, their role seen as service not just to a king, but to the gods themselves. The precision of the Great Pyramid is staggering. Its sides align almost perfectly with the four cardinal directions. Its base is nearly a perfect square. And its original polished limestone casing stones, which have mostly eroded away, would have reflected the sun so brightly that the pyramid glistened like a jewel in the desert. Some suggest it could even be seen from miles across the Nile Valley, a shimmering beacon that connected Earth to the heavens. But how exactly were they built? This is where curiosity deepens. Scholars propose ramps of mud, brick, and stone, rising alongside the pyramid, allowed blocks to be dragged upwards. Others suggest spiraling internal ramps hidden within the structure itself. The truth may be a combination of both. What remains clear is that no modern machine or crane was available. Only human determination, ingenuity, and an intimate understanding of geometry and balance. The very act of construction became a ritual, a bridge between mortal life and eternity. The pyramids were not isolated achievements. They were part of vast complexes. Temples for ritual offerings, causeways stretching like sacred roads, and smaller pyramids for queens all surrounded the central tomb. The pyramid was the heart of a grand design meant to ensure that the pharaoh's soul would ascend to the afterlife. Every stone, every chamber, every carving carried symbolic weight. Even the so-called air shafts inside Khufu's pyramid align with stars, Orion and Sirius, suggesting the builders linked the pharaoh's destiny with the eternal cosmos. Nearby, the enigmatic Sphinx lies with its lion's body and human head, gazing eternally eastward. Its purpose, like the pyramids, inspires endless debate. Was it a guardian, a symbol of pharaonic power, or a representation of the sun god? The erosion on its body raises another layer of mystery. Some argue it shows signs of water weathering, hinting at construction far earlier than traditionally believed. If true, it would rewrite the history of Egypt as we know it. Over time, pyramids evolved. At first, they were step-like structures, like Djoser's step pyramid at Saqqara, the earliest large-scale stone building in history. Later came smooth-sided pyramids, more refined and symbolic of rays of sunlight descending from the sky. But as centuries passed, construction slowed. Later dynasties shifted toward hidden tombs in the Valley of the Kings, perhaps to protect their treasures from grave robbers. Yet despite all efforts, most pyramids were plundered long ago. What remained was not the gold, but the grandeur, the sheer presence of monuments that defied time. Even today, the pyramids remain alive with questions. Were they aligned using the stars, the sun, or both? Did the builders encode mathematical knowledge, like the value of pi, into their dimensions? And what drove this ancient society to pour unimaginable resources into structures meant for the afterlife? The pyramids remain as much mysteries as they are achievements. For modern Egypt, they are not only relics but anchors of identity. Millions of tourists flock to Giza each year, drawn by the same wonder that captivated ancient travelers like Herodotus. They bring life to Cairo's streets, support countless families, and remind the world that Egypt's greatest treasures are not just artifacts of stone, but symbols of the enduring human spirit. And yet, there is something deeper, something unspoken, that the pyramids whisper to us. They tell us that human beings, no matter how long ago, dreamed of eternity. They sought permanence in a world that is fragile, fleeting, and uncertain. They worked together, creating structures that would outlast empires, wars, and even their own names. In the stones of Giza, we hear their voices still, echoing across millennia. To look upon them is to wonder not just about the pharaohs, but about ourselves. What do we leave behind? What will endure of us? The pyramids stand as mirrors, reflecting both the triumphs and questions of humanity. And as the sun sets over the desert, painting the stones in hues of gold and shadow, one truth is undeniable. These monuments are not only Egypt's legacy, but humanity's inheritance, calling us to look higher, reach further, and dream beyond the horizon. When we think of Egypt, the images that come to mind are often of towering pyramids, colossal statues, and golden treasures gleaming under museum lights. But Egyptology is far more than the study of ancient wonders. It is a living dialogue between past and present, a reminder of how deeply human history runs through the sands of the Nile Valley. For over 2 centuries, scholars, adventurers, and local Egyptians have tried to piece together this ancient story. And yet, even with modern science and technology, much remains hidden, waiting to be uncovered. The discipline of Egyptology was born in the early 19th century, when Napoleon's expedition to Egypt brought not only soldiers, but also scholars, artists, and scientists. Their detailed drawings, descriptions, and discoveries introduced the Western world to the richness of ancient Egyptian culture. Yet the true revolution came in 1799, with the unearthing of a black stone slab near the town of Rosetta. This artifact, the Rosetta Stone, was carved with the same text in 3 scripts: Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphic. It was the key that allowed scholars, particularly Jean-François Champollion, to unlock the meaning of hieroglyphs. Suddenly, the walls of temples, tombs, and monuments began to speak again, and a civilization long shrouded in silence came alive. With that breakthrough, Egyptology became a field driven by curiosity, discipline, and sometimes rivalry. Explorers like Giovanni Belzoni, often criticized for their rough methods, dragged colossal statues out of temples and shipped them to European museums. Later, more systematic excavations revealed entire cities, burial grounds, and hidden chambers. One of the greatest moments came in 1922, when Howard Carter uncovered the nearly intact tomb of Tutankhamun in the Valley of the Kings. The sight of golden coffins, jeweled masks, and delicate objects preserved for over 3,000 years stunned the world and reignited fascination with Egypt. But modern Egyptology is no longer about treasure alone. Today, it is about context, understanding, and respect. Archaeologists use cutting-edge tools: satellite imaging to locate lost cities beneath the desert, DNA analysis to trace royal bloodlines, and 3D scanning to recreate tombs without damaging them. These advances show that Egypt was not isolated but connected to wider networks of trade and culture, linking Africa, the Mediterranean, and the Near East. Every discovery adds another piece to the puzzle, painting a richer picture of how the ancient Egyptians lived, worshipped, and imagined their place in the universe. At the heart of Egyptology lies a question: why does this civilization continue to captivate us so deeply? Part of the answer lies in its scale. The pyramids, temples, and statues were not just architectural achievements. They were statements of permanence, built to last beyond the fragile span of human life. Another part lies in its spirituality. The Egyptians believed that life was only one part of existence, that death was not an end, but a transition. This belief shaped their rituals, their art, and their determination to preserve memory. In a world where so much is temporary, their pursuit of eternity resonates across cultures and generations. Yet Egyptology is not without controversy. For decades, artifacts were removed and displayed in foreign museums, raising debates about cultural ownership. Today, Egypt itself is reclaiming its heritage, building new institutions like the Grand Egyptian Museum near Giza, which will house thousands of treasures, including Tutankhamun's complete collection. This shift reflects not just pride in the past, but also an acknowledgement that these objects are part of a living culture, belonging to the land and people who carry Egypt's story forward. Egyptology also carries lessons for the present. The study of irrigation, agriculture, and social organization in the Nile Valley reminds us how human societies can adapt to and thrive within challenging environments. The collapse of certain dynasties reveals how fragile power can be, subject to famine, unrest, or invasion. And the preservation of monuments teaches us about resilience, about what can endure even when empires fade. Most of all, Egyptology is about human connection. Behind the stone faces of pharaohs and the grand temples dedicated to gods, there were ordinary lives, scribes recording grain harvests, artists painting tomb walls, families burying loved ones with care, children playing along the Nile. By studying Egypt, we see ourselves, our ambitions, our fears, our creativity, and our longing to be remembered. As the sun sets behind the pyramids, casting long shadows over the desert, Egyptology reminds us that history is never fully in the past. It lives in our imagination, in our science, and in the questions we continue to ask. The sands may cover temples, and time may erode stone, but the story of Egypt endures, etched not only in hieroglyphs but in the human desire to seek meaning, to build, and to leave behind something greater than ourselves. In this way, Egyptology is more than a field of study. It is a bridge across millennia, connecting us to a civilization that dreamed of eternity, and in many ways achieved it. Beneath the golden sun and the endless desert sky, Egypt still breathes. Its monuments, though scarred by time, remain unbroken. Its hieroglyphs, once silent, now speak again, whispering stories of kings, queens, and ordinary lives woven into the tapestry of eternity. To walk among the pyramids or stand before the temples of Luxor is to feel the pulse of a civilization that refused to be forgotten. Egyptology does not merely uncover stone and bone, it unlocks memory. It brings us face to face with the unshakable truth that the human spirit has always reached for something beyond the horizon. And so, the question is no longer only about Egypt's past, but about our own future. What will we build that will endure? What story will we leave for those who come after us? The Egyptians sought eternity in stone, in faith, in art, and in knowledge. They succeeded, for their legacy still commands wonder thousands of years later. As the last rays of sun slip behind the pyramids, casting them in shadows of gold and mystery, we are reminded of one unchanging truth. Civilizations may rise and fall, but their echoes never die. Egypt's voice is still calling. The only question is, are we listening? Thank you for watching History Vault.